How many mistakes have you made in your life? Probably too many to keep track of, right? Sometimes the mistakes are so small you forget about them later that day, but sometimes the mistakes are big enough you remember them for the rest of your life. Now, have you ever had someone else make a mistake that didn't just affect them, it impacted you as well? Maybe for you, it was one or both of your parents that made a mistake that completely changed the way that you viewed yourself, love, relationships, Jesus, and other things. This is a very special series called Thoughts from a Dad. Joining me in this series is one of my top mentors and advisor in my company, and he just so happens to be my dad, Reed DeVries. Now, Reed has been in ministry and business for over 40 years, and he has personally mentored hundreds of people, both in business and in faith. Now, I know that all sounds great, but Dad had to work through a lot of trauma and pain from his past in order to become the man that he is today. He successfully broke off any generational curses, and that allowed him to become the businessman, the pastor, the husband, and the dad that he is. You see, the goal and the topic of this video is your parents' mistakes do not define you. And we want you ladies to know and believe that you can become anything you want to be as long as you put the work in. So to start, Dad, you had a father that unfortunately made a lot of severe mistakes in his life that not only impacted him, but it significantly impacted you as well. So to start, could you just share your story on what were the mistakes that your dad made and how they impacted you?
Sure. Well, so good to be with you.
Yeah.
So proud of you. There are really three kinds of people in life. There are people who are a tremendous example on how to live life. Okay. There's also people who are a tremendous warning on how not to live your life. And then there's a third group that are both. My dad was both. My dad from birth through 8th grade was a tremendous example on how to live a life, a very godly man, a loving man, very talented, skilled. We had a large family that we were part of because he had multiple brothers and sisters. I had almost 50 first cousins. We all went to the same church, all in the same area. So I grew up in that kind of a family environment. It was wonderful. And then in my 9th grade year, everything flipped. And everything that he was, he now wasn't. And he made some very just poor choices, had affair, addictions, and so forth. And what happened at that point in time when he left our family, by his decision left our family in 9th grade, what happened to me is I lost 3 families. I lost my nuclear family. He was gone. My sister was now in college, so it was just my mom and I. I lost my extended family because they were all his brothers and sisters. And because of that, that family went away. Also lost my church family because when you grow up in a real small town and half the church is related, it's not a good situation. And so because of that, I lost all 3 families at one shot. And what that did to me as a 9th grader going into 10th grade, I threw myself into stuff to try to find validation, find who I was. And for me, it was accomplishment. And so I started just trying to excel at whatever I could. Unfortunately, I had coaches that never saw my athletic, degree that I could go to.
That's a shame.
It is. But in all other areas, I tried to accomplish it because it gave me validation on certain things. And so that was part of the situation of the reality of my dad.
Yeah. And after your dad left, and then after you and mom got married and you were newlyweds, how did you see some of your dad's addictive traits that led to his downfall even start to kind of claw their way back into your life and your new marriage with mom?
Sure. Addiction is obviously a crazy thing, and sometimes people think of addictions as all the negative ones, kind of thing. For example, I had an addiction to pornography. Unfortunately, my dad introduced that to me when in 10th grade, in 9th, 10th grade, as he left, kind of thing. But addictions look a lot of different ways. I admit I had addiction, obviously, to accomplishments, to try to find validation. I had addictions to being a workaholic, because again, that validated who I was. Maybe some people have addictions to eating or to social media or a variety of things. Spending can be a variety of things. And every addiction, Sarah, is a really one of two things. It's either a control mechanism, okay, that I can control something so that I'm not hurt again by something, or it's an escape.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, there can be bad escapes or good escapes, but there's still escapes from the reality of things. And so unfortunately what happened, as you know, I fell in love with your mom the first day I saw her.
Yep.
We were chemistry partners our junior year in high school. And so I've always loved her, but what happened is because I was focused on trying to validate myself through accomplishments, she was an accomplishment, and I checked it off the list. And unfortunately, that plus the other addictions, pornography included, lasted probably the first, actually, probably 12, 13 years of our life at that point. So unfortunately, in fact, we just talked about this again last week about the standpoint of how sorry I was that I brought that all into the marriage, but that's where I was at.
Yeah, that's where you're at, and that's what happened. And especially when you have a dad that introduced you to that as well too at such a young age, you can see how that just significantly impacted you, and like a boy's desire to want to like make his dad love him, even if it meant doing things with your dad that weren't right. So then what would you say were the things that you had to do, Dad, to completely break off the addiction so you could fully heal your heart and your mind and your spirit to become the man that you are now today?
Yeah, well, I think there's a variety of situations. Sometimes it's facing the reality of where you're really at. But also I would say this, it was you, David, because your brother, because of the fact that, the example I always give is this, is that if you're going to marry somebody and you find out a couple days before you get married that they have $250,000 of debt, guess what now you have? Yeah. $250,000 of debt, you better love them. Kind of thing. Because whatever they have, it's going to be yours. Yeah. And I knew this, that whatever addictive behaviors that were in my life, if I didn't come to grips with that, they would now become yours. They would become generational. The Bible talks about it being a generational curse. And there came a point that said, you know what, I can't have you pay for what I chose. Okay, even though maybe I didn't understand the choice at the moment, I've chosen it. I have to now move a different direction. And so I knew that because if I didn't, you'd have to pay for it. The grandkids would have to pay for it. And I said it can't happen. So I went through a journey. Went through 3 years of counseling to try to unravel all the different parts of it. Got some great accountability in my life, so accountability systems, built different habits in my life, a lot of things related to that to try to help me address certain things, as well as read a lot of books on things that helped me understand why was I doing what I was doing. At that point, I was able to say, okay, I choose that no more. Yeah. And because of that, hopefully it's a different legacy.
Yes. You know, I'll say, Dad, because you did the hard work of going to counseling, going to therapy, meeting with mentors, having accountability, you did completely change the life that my older brother David and I have. And I can say that when I look back, I don't even know if you hadn't made the decision to change and do the hard work of healing yourself and not letting your dad's mistakes define you, I don't even know if I would have married Chad, because I'm not even sure I would have believed I deserved a man like that. Yep. So thank you for doing the hard work. So ladies, your challenge this week is to know that your parents' mistakes do not define you. You can heal, you can overcome, you can become anything that you want to be.